Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Report. The mission of the show is really to inspire and empower you to build generational wealth with real estate. And so it's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to share with you a story about a good friend of mine who I think is very, very inspirational. I went from the NFL now into commercial real estate, and more specifically, real estate development. I'm Chris Berg. I'm your host. I'm the head of business development with Abernathy Holdings. We go out and we build Class A self-storage in California, Arizona, and soon to be beyond. You can see here, join us today, Kwame Ellis. He is now the CEO of Titan and Associates. I want to share, Kwame, before I do introduce you here, man, just a little great story that the NFL Alumni Org did on you recently, talking about what you're up to in Texas and making a big impact because you're also focused on affordable housing. So it's great to reconnect, and thank you for joining us here on the show today, man.
Anytime. I appreciate you. I mean, this is beautiful, man. You got this.
Thank you, man.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I'm excited to share your story, man, because I think it's really fascinating as you see guys that, go through playing at a high level in college, the NFL, and then they get out and you're a little bit lost. I mean, I was a little bit lost just coming out of college, let alone the NFL, because it was so much of your identity for so long. And so, I do want to jump into more of the real estate specific in a moment. Let's just talk about your story, man. You grew up in Berkeley, but you ended up at the farm playing at Stanford. Like, first off, how does that happen?
So, yeah, which was an amazing story in itself, growing up in the Bay Area, tracking the local teams, right? Went to Skyline High School there in Oakland, California, and very familiar with the colleges, especially the big ones, right? You got Berkeley, of course, Cal, and then Stanford. I mean, those are the heavy hitters in the area. And so you over my years of playing amateur sports, you start to learn more, and more so my dad really wanted me to pay attention to Stanford because it wasn't on my radar initially, quite frankly, because growing up, as being a good football player and playing in Oakland, at that time when we were in school, I mean, it was all about Notre Dame, right? And Lou Holtz and USC, and one of my mentors out of Skyline actually went to USC, and so my first recruitment letter came from USC, so I was leaning that way. And then also I had a little bit of reservation about staying too close to home. I wanted to stay in California, but initially being still up under mom and dad, I wanted to kind of spread my wings a little bit, but being a great student as well as a great on the gridiron, my dad always pushed. He said, "Hey, this is the separator here. It's always grades. Here's the separator." And then my dad always would say, "Look, it's not about the next 4. I think it's the next 40. What's going to happen?" And I think that my dad and my mom, being in education, had that foresight. Right? It's not just about football. It's more so about, okay, what happens next? What happens after that? And so I think in growing up, being well-rounded, because I played an instrument as well. I played in the jazz band, and so I played all the way up through high school. So I would play football, and then in basketball season, I'd be in the band playing for the basketball team, and this is as a junior, in high school, so I never put the instrument down. So that, again, a testament to my parents and them wanting me to see more or get more out of me than just playing a sport, right? It's just, giving me more of a rounded personality, rounded thoughts, and also just giving me the ability to maneuver and go into other spaces and meet more people. So I think that was key, certainly key.
First, man, I love me, your dad saying, "Hey, it's not about the next 4 or the next 40. I think that is a paramount piece to take out of this. Secondly, I remember there's some times at halftime, I was like, what happened to Kwame? You weren't dressing up as the tree at halftime at times.
I was eyeing the band over there. I was always fascinated about our band. I'm like,
Exactly.
I can pick that alto sax up and just, play a little bit.
One of the things I want to ask you before we get into kind of your journey into real estate is, I think you were recruited by, the late great Bill Walsh. What was your greatest takeaway playing for him as a coach, as a man?
Yeah, so that was special in its own right, because growing up in Oakland at the time, I believe the Raiders left. They were in LA, right? And that happened a couple times. And so 80s was all the 49ers. And so being a young athlete, watching TV, being able to see the success of that San Francisco program, and it being so close because we're right there in the Bay Area, I admired what they did. From the players, Ronnie Lott's, the Jerry Rices, the Roger Craigs, Keena Turner, and a lot of those guys. Some of them were on our sidelines, and we're at our practices. So that was really surreal for me. In fact, I'll tell you a story. As we all know, Denny Green, late great Denny Green, another terrific coach, recruited me, right? And I was really on the fence still. However, I was going to go to Stanford. My dad, hey, you're going to Stanford. And and then of course the rumor mill starts, hey, Coach Green is going to head to the pros, right? And even before social media, seeds were being planted by other colleges and letting me know that, and you don't know who your coach is going to be. And I had truly, once Denny Green left, and I told Lou Holtz this on my trip. I said, well, if all this is true, and if he leaves, then I'm gonna come to Notre Dame. And I remember that happening, and I was just sad. I was really, really sad, because I was like, I got to go to Notre Dame. In my mind, I thought that was the next best opportunity, how they paired academics with athletics. But it was so far. South Bend, Indiana is no California, no Bay Area. It's snow on the ground out there. So I cried. Chris, I cried like that whole night. I remember I said, I got to go. I told my dad, I said, I got to leave. I was distraught. The next day, Bill Walsh announces that he's going to come to Stanford. And my dad, I took a part-time job at Round Table just to be busy. And he came to the job. He said, you don't have to go to Notre Dame. You don't have to go. I said, what? He said, Coach Walsh, son. Coach Walsh is coming. I said, wow. And that day, that's very same day, he announced that he was at my house that night.
Wow.
So he's on TV. They make the announcement. That night, my mom, he's in our kitchen with Keith Sparks, all the other programs. Listen, they pull up with like 3 Lincoln Town cars, black, and it just I was like the CIA or something, they shut it down. They came. And they literally was in my house that same day. My high school coach came over. My dad came out with the Stanford hat on, and he said, this is where we're going. so it was literally surreal from seeing him on TV to in my living room that same day, stating, hey, we want you to come to Stanford. And I said, absolutely. Absolutely, coach. Where do I sign?
Man, I wish I would have seen your pops with like seeing, because Coach Walsh, the guy's legendary, right? And because walking into your house, and that is incredible.
Over the moon. My dad had the whole gear, all the gear on. Stanford hat, Stanford. I'm still trying to play cool. I'm 17, 18 years old.
He just shows up with a few Super Bowl rings and just closes the deal, right? Like, all right, son.
It was over before he even showed up.
Sorry, I do want you to share. I want to share a quick story with you as well, but I do want you to share again because we're talking to people in commercial real estate. It's a super competitive industry.
Yeah.
What you took away learning from a Super Bowl champion and how that has transferred into your real estate business. But quick story for you. So, we were at the Aloha Bowl, right? Coach Green was still there. Stanford was kind of on the coming up right now. Coach Green putting together a good team. And I'll share this with you. He was like, we had our team meetings obviously before that week of the bowl game. Man, I love Stanford. I'm not going anywhere. I love this place. We're going to be here forever. That whole what coaches do, right?
Right.
We end up beating Georgia Tech. We get on the charter plane to go home. It was a Christmas Day game. So everyone's kind of excited going for Christmas. We just won Stanford. Everyone's like, wait, where's Coach Green's not around? We can't leave without Coach Green. Oh, he's in Minnesota taking the Vikings job. Yeah, man. It was just, everyone's like, what? So anyways, I had to share that with you because, yeah, I love Coach Green. He was just such an epic, all about winning coach. So with that being said, how did what you learned from Bill Walsh transfer into life and more specifically commercial real estate?
So I really just think that the X's and O's, the detail, right? You were offense, and remember, I came in initially at offense, and so I had a chance.
Love you there, man.
Yeah. So, came in as a running back, and so just the way that he talked about the attention to detail and how things on the periphery affects everything. It was as a receiver, being on the outside, you can affect a running play, and he would share with you how, and so I think, that part, and then just really just the behavior, right? Learning how to just act as if it's almost, I mean, people say it's what do they say, swag or something like that, but it's a true aura. Sometimes you are in the midst of greatness and in the flow of winning, and it becomes contagious. It becomes, your behavior becomes of which you're around, and so I think a lot of that has to do with it too. When you think you have an opportunity to compete and win, then your behavior follows that, and so it starts in your mind, and so all that flowed down from Coach Walsh, and I will never forget it. A lot of those things I hold with me to today, and what I do, and being prepared, that's another thing, you remember, I mean, you no one was more prepared than that offense to go out there, and execute. You would go over it again and again and again, and then the check downs and the checks, and as a quarterback, you had to know all those things, Chris, and so all that, as you know, in business comes into play because you have to have some check downs sometimes.
Exactly.
You got to call an audible too sometimes. It's not gonna work the way that we drew it up. And so being able to shift, pivot, to still try to get to that ultimate goal is something that is transferable from sports, specifically football, into our business world and what we do in real estate. So I love it. I love all that experience. College, again, I don't want to go off on too many stories, but it's so fun. You realize some things after the fact a lot. I would say my testimony is from Stanford, a lot of great guys. It didn't go how I wanted it to go, particularly as far as the play all the time, but it went how it needed to go. If that makes sense. I came in highly recruited, All-American, played early, got benched, in a critical year. My junior year, didn't play at all, didn't see the field, and was very discouraged. And as you know, when you talk about pro prospects, your junior year makes a big difference in setting you up and how you're going to be ranked. And so very, very discouraged. But, and looking back at it, it was that humility was
Mm.
needed. It was needed. I was a bit over my skis, and I probably shouldn't have started as early as I did. When I think about it now, I had the talent, I was fast and all those other things, but I don't think I had the mental and emotional maturity coming from high school, going to a major program to play at the time. Now, you don't know this when you're 17 and you're coming in, you're playing in a big time program that's on TV, and it's right in your backyard. Your buddies are in the stands, and you're the man. You know what I mean? But in hindsight, that was needed for me to really I believe become who I am today. And not get too far ahead of yourself. So I don't know. I think that's important too. I mean, sports will do that to you.
Kwame, man, thank you for saying that. Because as of late, I've been in prayer about some stuff in my own space, and it's just the message I keep getting is just do the work, do the work, do the work. And my point of bringing that back to you is that, there's things probably that you just needed the reps back then when you were a freshman, just to understand the speed and the patterns of the game, because that was one of the things I really appreciate about Coach Walsh. But he had seen so many different, what I would call patterns in a game. He just saw it differently. I mean, I don't know if you remember, he would walk in at halftime, and the average Joe spectator's thinking, okay, if we get 14 points in the second half, we win. And he'd come in and go, okay, guys, we need 11 first downs. And you're thinking, first downs? What are you talking about? First downs to win the game, right? So he just had a different way to see it because of all those reps. And so I think it's probably the same thing in real estate. The more you do it, the more you focus on what you're doing, you start to see some of those really minute patterns, or you talked about details that can make a big difference on, when to buy or when not to, things like that. So if you want to comment on that, great. And then let's talk about, because it sounds like both your parents are from education. When did the real estate bug catch you, and why?
So early. In fact, in going into Stanford, I wanted to major in architecture. At that time, they didn't have an architecture school. But I've always had an affinity, a passion for creating spaces that which you can live in and love. My mom and I used to just drive through the neighborhoods and look at different houses, go to open houses. I was in elementary school. I remember this, and this
what?
Yes. This was fun to me. How is this bathroom designed? Why did they put this window here versus over here? This is stuff that I was internalizing in elementary school, middle school, and then I was in drafting classes, and I did my first architecture. My mom still has it to this day, where I designed my house, which I called it my dream house then. And I was in 11th grade, I believe. So I always knew at some point I would be in real estate. So I would say once I left school, I went into engineering. Well, in the Department of Engineering. That's where I started at Stanford, because they didn't have the architecture school, like I said. So that was the closest thing that the advisor said you could do that would correlate to architecture somehow, So I think once I left school, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I didn't know. I think after my junior year, I didn't know that I was going to play beyond college. I think really just having a spearheaded, really breakout senior year, I played really well. I got shot, and my dad would say, all you need is a shot, and so with that shot, I stuck, and came out as an undrafted free agent, made the team, and so I think at that point, even then, in the back of my head, Chris, I was like, this is great, but this is not going to go forever, right? And I knew that going in, just as an undrafted free agent, that I'm a bubble guy, right? I'm a work hard, grind it out, I'm gonna make it difficult for them to get rid of me. That was my mindset. And so, but I also worked in the off season. I worked with Boldry Capital Management there in Palo Alto, and worked on investing. I just know I wanted to invest, and so I was researching Sunglass Hut before it was Sunglass Hut, and finding out whether or not it'd be a good investment to park capital in, and so I was always thinking something else. I was talking to my teammates, like the older teammates in New York, and I said, the middle linebacker Marvin Jones, he was like a #1 pick out of Florida State, I think. And I would ask them, I say, hey, what are you doing with your money? Like, I wasn't a super partier or anything like that. And I knew I was there on a part-time basis. So I needed to soak in as much as I could. And so I'm going to the vets and I'm asking them, hey, what are you doing? What? Okay, I'm doing stocks and bonds and the future. And that wasn't always sexy to me because I like to touch stuff, I like to touch it and feel it. And so when Marvin said, Kwame, I buy real estate. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about?
Wow.
He said, yeah. He said, I like to touch and feel everything that I buy. And I was like, ooh, that triggered me. I said, I feel the same way. So what are you doing exactly? He said, I just went into my old neighborhood and I bought houses. I said, really? You could, I know you just buy it. I didn't even know that this was an investment strategy. I didn't know. I thought you just bought a house to live in. You know what I mean? I was like, my mom and dad bought a house. I thought you'd buy a house to live in. You mean to tell me you bought more than one house? He was like, yes. And I rent them out and I do this. And he's going into what he's doing. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. That's where I'm going to start at least.
Wow.
And so that's what did it for me. So I knew already, even while playing, I knew, and that's what I was going to do, and I started to do it. I started to take courses and classes, not realtor classes. I'm talking about investment classes. How do you invest capital and how do you evaluate a deal? And what do you do? If it's a distressed asset, meaning if it's broken down, and how do you know what to pay for it? And so those are the things that I studied, and I studied that for 2 years. Didn't buy anything because I was scared. I didn't want to lose money. I was like, I worked hard for my money. I don't want to lose. But one thing, Chris, I tell you, it goes back to Stanford, what my parents told me and everything else. We were students. So what I could do is gather the information. And I had the time to do that. I had the time to do it. So I wasn't in a hurry because it was all my money. I didn't want to lose it. So I listened to what my man said on the team, and I went to courses and classes, and I took every real estate course you could probably think of when it comes to those infomercials and all that other stuff. But I sat in there and I knew I was going to get something out of it. I know people bash them and they're just selling that. They don't even do it themselves. I didn't care if they did it themselves or not. I knew what I was there for, and I was there for the information. And so, like I said, 2 years in training, and then I finally got up nerve. And like anything else, you gotta jump in the water. I had to jump in the water and start swimming.
Yeah, but I do love how you're framing it, because when I hear 2 years, I know that doesn't completely line up, but it was kind of like your own personal MBA program in real estate, right? It's like, okay, I got to go and I got to study this, because I think that's part of the challenge, Kwame, that you see with some of the guys in the league is they've got people, we'll just say, that are bringing them restaurants or bars, or and they're just like, they don't know how to read a pro forma. And nothing against them. That's not my expertise either. It's just that they're like, hey, I trust you. Sure, here's $100 grand or $1 million or whatever it is. And yet they hadn't done the 2 years that you did. So when someone brings them a deal, they can go, well, wait a second, what's the IRR in this, right? Like, what's going to be my cost? Like, those are, and what I'm finding the more I'm in this space, which I love as well, this real estate, is that it's like a different language. So as I've been learning Spanish, right, it's like as I'm learning that language, now I can communicate more effectively. As I learn the financial language, like, okay, you want to plant some IRRs at me? Let's have the conversation, kind of thing. So I really commend you for doing that. I think it's very inspirational for people watching to go, hey, take some time, learn. So you do this 2 years of studying. Was there a niche or a particular area? Because, real estate is such a vast
Yeah,
industry. Was there a particular area that really resonated with you, and
yeah.
how did you then get started?
Great question. I'm glad you asked that because to your point, real estate can mean a lot. It could be you can be on the finance side. You can not even touch any piece of real estate and still be a part of it. You can deal with the title company and clearing all the link. But I'm glad you asked. So what resonated with me the most growing up in Oakland was home ownership. Home ownership. So I focused on residential home ownership because I wanted to see people go into homes and just I believe in, and I still do, and that's why I focus so heavily here. I believe that that is the launching pad for creating better health, better esteem, better generations, and it also stacks up where you can actually you can leave a legacy behind, even if you just buy one house. You buy one house, you pass on, you're passing something on to your children and your children's children. And those houses have a value, an intrinsic value. Whether it's beat up or anything else, it still has a value. It still has a value. So I was into transforming spaces. So I focused on residentials. I would go to the worst house on the street and just totally transform it. And I would create that value, and so that's how I earned a living, but it was also I earned satisfaction in transforming that what rundown home that no one wanted to live in into something beautiful and seeing a family take possession, whether that be renting it or actually purchasing it outright, and that was the win-win for me. And I got the bug, and that's what catapulted and fast forward to where we are today, but uh, that's why I landed there because I wanted to relate and be able to create something that could bring together families. And I think a home does that.
Again, thank you, because I didn't know any of this story, this part of your story, and yet here you are, just completely lined up with the mission of the show is really, again, empowering people to build generational wealth with real estate. And you just said that. I just had a great conversation. I don't know if you remember this name, but Malcolm Johnson played for Notre Dame. Right before you and I were talking, I was talking with Malcolm. He's doing affordable housing here in LA. Played with the Steelers, so same thing on his heart as well. Is hey, what can we do to go out and focus on empowering minority communities to get into homes and build that kind of legacy with real estate. So that was awesome to hear. I didn't know that. So today now, Titan and Associates, I think I read 10 years now you guys have been in business. So what's your focus right now in Dallas, Fort Worth, and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we're doing a couple things. We have a full-blown construction management division that focuses on revitalization. So the rehabbing, kind of where I started, right? We do that specifically for the municipalities. In most cities across the country, you hear the term, we need more affordable housing stock in the urban areas, more towards the closer to the city center. But usually the city center is the most aged housing stock that you have because it's the oldest part of the city. It is right there in the center. And so there are programs that most cities, I don't know all, but certainly here in the Dallas area, where they have funding available to actually that's designated for seniors and low to moderate income families. And they got federal dollars. They pair them with city and state dollars, and they do major revitalizations of those homes. So, for instance, the electrical oftentimes is outdated. That's a health and safety risk. Okay. The plumbing is shot, again, health, safety, the roof, the foundation, all these major systems that could become disastrous. Those dollars are earmarked for that. Now, in order to deploy those funds, they need competent general contractors to deliver those services. And so I learned maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, as we were working on the private side, doing the same exact thing, where we'd buy the home and revitalize it and put it back out to market. City had the same need. A lot of cities had the same need. So they called upon me. They said, would you consider it? I said, yes, absolutely. It allows me now to impact more people.
Yes.
And that's what I'm here for. My partner's here for that. We want to impact as many people as we possibly can. So we tapped into these programs now, and we have the expertise, the wherewithal, the bandwidth to be able to bring in and revitalize these homes. And so we do it for City of Dallas, City of Irvin, Grand Prairie, McKinney, a lot of surrounding cities here in the Metroplex, Fort Worth. And they bring us in, Titan Construction Services, to actually manage that process. So we do that. All right. That's one part of it. The other part of what we do is we buy raw land, infill lots. And this is the development side where we'll buy 5, 6, 7, or 8 different lots, whether it's through the government or through some of our sources that we have out there. And it's either a dilapidated property on it, or it's just totally vacant and trashed out, overgrown trees and all those things. And we take it over, we acquire it, we clear the lot, and then we build out an affordable home. And it's designated for those income earners between the 60 to 120 of the area median income. So it doesn't mean that they, it's a HUD federal ruler that they have, and I think the high end is if you're a single person, I think you make 80, if you can make 88,000, you qualify anywhere from 40,000 to 88,000, which, it's a decent salary. And most of the times those are going to be individuals that are working in the city, your first responders, your educators, your plumbers, whatever it might be. But those are the people that are in the city that need to be able to have housing options where they work, where they work, and so that's it's another story. My wife is an ER nurse, and she works for the VA here. And one of the houses that we brought online, one of her coworkers lived right next door in her father's old house, and she she took it over, but it was like, because it's right around the corner from the VA. Wow. And the reason why she took it over was because it was, again, generation, it was passed down, but she could no longer afford to buy a new house in that area, because what's happening is you've got higher end homes coming in that are closer to the city center that have outpriced the individuals that used to live there. And so that happens not only in Dallas, but that happens all over our country, and so for us to be able to do that, and she's like, I could buy that house right there. That's in my strike zone, even though she's lucky enough, and that's one of the reasons why we do this, where her house got passed down to her. But, we are now filling that gap where you've got your nurses and, like I said, first responders that are able to literally buy a brand new home, new construction, and right there where they work, so that, again, that both of those arms and lines of business for us at Titan bring so much joy, so much fulfillment to me personally, and to everybody that works on our team. They share this vision that I'm sharing with you.
Man, I love where your heart's at, because taking care of these first responders, it's such a critical aspect to a city running well, for people to feel safe and to provide housing, like you talked about, what that does for your self-esteem, your stability, and also keeps these people around in these communities for a long time. So I just really tip my hat to you, Kwame. I think it's awesome. Let's go out 5 or 10 years. Where do you see Titan and Associates? What are you guys doing in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to my partner Khalid this morning about that. One of the things that we're trying to do, again, sticking with that theme, how can we impact more people? We are now looking to acquire larger tracts of land, not necessarily just your one lot here, two lots, individual infill lots is what they call them, meaning there's already a community around it and there may be a vacant or a void within a community. That's what I mean by infill lots. That's what we're doing now. But now we're going to start focusing. We'll still do that, but we will start focusing on acquiring larger tracts, 12 acres, 20 acres, and developing communities.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
Wow.
that's 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 the next step right there. So now we have a community of 40 families that we are impacting and their children's, and I think that that is quite naturally the next step for us. And so we've already started to come into discussions. And the first thing was just kind of letting people know that is the next step. And just for the pure nature of what we do, people want to participate or they want to help or they, and so now all of a sudden we are now getting leads, and even our bankers, they're like, hey, well, we've got another, we've got, we've got another customer that has this over here. And, yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, this is really happening, and it's almost like you got to put it out there, you got to put it out there. It's definitely a step, another step up, because you're talking about now developing the infrastructure. They call it horizontal development. That's the streets, that's the sewer lines, the water lines, where typically we go vertical. We find it, all the stuff is there. We just tap into it with the city. But now we'll start going horizontal development. And that's a new cup of tea,
Yeah.
So more learning. So we're attaching ourselves to people that have been there, done that. We come with our experience of general contracting and knowing the vertical side, but now we've got to go back to school, and part of that is exciting as well. That's what I love about this business, Chris. I mean, you're always learning. There's always something new. There's a way to expand, and in that expansion, there's going to be some growth, some personal growth, some, all
Kwame,
that.
I love you said that. First off, man, it's obviously a great sign if the banker's like, hey, essentially, how can we give you more money? You know it's good at that point. And I just appreciate and agree with what you just mentioned. That's one of the things I've really enjoyed about my transition from media to real estate is that I'm hoping to be like Charlie Munger, right? Like 99 and still trying to do deals. And like, wait a second, can we get our IRR up a little bit on this thing? So couple more things, and I want to just be respectful of your time. So when you go into this community development, are you going to just be using banks, your own equity? Are you guys looking to do like syndications, a fund? Are you going to raise capital?
So great question. All of it, we'll look at the capital stack and set it up as such that we are able to deliver a product that still is in line with what our mission is, and that is bringing obtainable, I should say, homes to the communities that are near the city center. Okay, so we will be pairing with and partnering with the government entities. Okay, there's dollars available there, and any investors or any capital partners that we bring on, we're vetting them as well. We want them to understand what our mission is and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. So it has to be the right capital, as well, to make it work.
So to tie this back into sort of a Bill Walsh analogy, you've been now with Titan Associates Affordable Housing for, let's say, roughly the past 10 years. You've got a lot of experience. You've seen a lot of patterns, if you will. You're king for a day. because we all know the huge challenge of housing right now across this country. So you are king for a day. How would you solve this housing crisis in America?
Mm. Well, that's a really, really good question. I know that in what I'm doing right now, it cannot happen without public participation. And what I mean by that, the government subsidies. All right. Because that's the only way that we can deliver a home that is attainable. Because the dirt is going up everywhere as far as the cost of it. Okay. Especially in California. I mean, they're not creating anymore, and so you have to have a city council, uh, a city that believes in what they're saying, because everybody's saying it, right? But how does it work? How does it happen? And if it doesn't pencil, meaning if it doesn't economically work, it's just not going to work. So you've got to have a lot of committed individuals in order to solve the crisis, because it's always going to be a crisis, because when you got homelessness at an all-time high, and it's tough. It's so many different things, but there's going to have to be public officials that truly believe in it, just like entrepreneurs like myself. And it's not about just the bottom line, but it's also about, okay, building a quality place, a safe place for people to live. Because I believe this, right? I'm doing okay, right? Just doing. You can do good and do well at the
Yeah.
same time.
Amen.
You can do that. You can do it. I'm a living testament to that. I'm a living testament. No, I'm not driving around on Rolls Royce and nothing like that. That's not key. If you want to do that, then yeah, there's places in the real estate that you can get that. But you have to be committed to the long game, right? And to solve that issue that you're talking about, you got to be committed for the long game. And it can't just be myself, my company, my team. It's got to be public officials that are not just talking about it, but really being about it, and delivering to the community what's really needed, whether that be infrastructure. I talked about that horizontal development. That costs a lot of money to do. Costs a lot of money to do. And if it does not work right, then you're going to just continue to get really expensive housing, because that's the only way that there's a return to the banks, because the banks want to be paid back. Any sort of investor participation, they want to be paid back. If we partner Chris, right, Kwame, am I going to get paid back? Right. I mean, that's how it goes. You can't lose. So in order for that to happen, city officials have to make available the funding in order to do those sorts of things. And that's when you talk about the private public partnerships. And that's what I'm becoming very, very good at. I'm becoming very, very good at, because I want to stay in this space. And in order to do that, you've got to understand the inner workings of what's going on that public side, and who these public officials are, where's their heart, what kind of pool they have, and then really just make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, so well said, Kwame. Two more things, my friend. One is, so you've obviously spent a lot of time in California. There's been a huge exodus from this state, many to Texas. So I would love to get your take on maybe some of the main differences, and really, what is your take on the Dallas-Fort Worth community now? And I ask this because some people I've talked to have told me, hey, Chris, there is so much supply now in multifamily that you can go into Dallas and get maybe 3 to 6 months free when you sign a lease. So just what's your assessment of what's happening within the Dallas-Fort Worth real estate market?
Well, the demand is higher than ever. I will say that. There's still, in the space that I work in, there's still just a waiting list around the corner. It's just not enough supply. All right. One thing that we have that California doesn't have is we've got dirt. We've got a ton of it. I'm looking out my window here, and I mean, you can still see raw land everywhere. you know. So that's one thing, you know. And so I think that's why you have you know, the thought process that, okay, we can come here and develop some things, you know, because there's still room for that. Where do I see? I mean, now there has been an uptick too because the supply is so short, you know. So the pricing is, you know, and it's all relative, right? You know, but here in Texas, it's gotten more expensive to live closer to the city. And you've got some really beautiful developments that are going up, but they are outpricing the people that usually live in the communities, you know. So I don't know, I may be getting off track here, but there's room and there's space. All right. And really you come in here with an open mind and understanding what is your true mission, you know. That has to be clear because there's so much opportunity, you could be spread very, very thin, you know. And for me, I like to stay kind of laser focused and be the best at what I do, you know. Belichick, do your job, you know. Our job is, you know, hey, I want to be the subject matter expert when it comes to residential, single family, affordable homes, right? And that's what we have participated in, have gotten quite well at, and we understand the economics around it, you know. And so, and I love it.
Yeah, it shows, Kwame. I was going to say, man, thank you for the time, your heart today, your expertise, your insight, your inspiration. I think, you know, the last thing I will share. So just first off, thank you. I want you to share how people obviously can get a hold of you if they want to reach out and maybe work with you, get some more information. And also just from our backgrounds, you know, if you're talking to some athletes out there, really anybody, but just any closing insights, inspirational thoughts you want to share with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this. One, to get a hold of us, I mean, you just go to Titan and Associates. That's an ampersand.com. I don't know if you can throw it up there, but
Yeah.
titanandassociates.com. And that gets to us, that gets to me. I'm on LinkedIn heavily. So just Kwame Ellis, a quick search on LinkedIn, Kwame Ellis. That gets right to me. Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's the site there. For all athletes or former athletes that just have a notion of trying to get into real estate, one thing I would say is seek out somebody that's doing it. Doesn't have to be me, you know. Just seek out somebody that's doing it. Just think about what you did in sports. You looked at the guy in front of you, right? You wasn't always the top dog, or you didn't always know everything, right? There was a depth chart for a reason, you know. And so pay attention to the person in front of you, you know. And so I would, whether that be, it's a very tight network, right? I mean, if you played football, you know, there's not a lot of us that played, you know, D1 at, you know, major college and then also professionally. So somebody knows someone, you know. I would say that's the first thing, because that's what I did. You know, I connected with someone that was already doing it, got their thoughts, you know, to try to understand it, and then take the initiative to study as well. You know, I mean, it may not be the sexiest thing to do, but, you know, study. You got to study up and understand, you know, the economics behind what asset class you're investing in, so you understand how it works and you don't get anxious. You know, I mean, when you're dealing with your own money, you get anxious sometimes. You know, like I said, my testimony was I was a little fearful. You know, I was like, how am I going to get it back? You know. And so what calms that anxious or that anxiety is by studying and talking to someone, get a mentor, you know. And I'm available. I mean, I love the collaboration. Chris, thanks for reaching out. You know, I mean, we're going to talk offline about some other things, you know, we want to do, you know, but I love this. I love it. I love it. You know, being an adult and being out of football and really being in the real world, so to speak, and making your way, and especially making your way with your teammates and the people that you had an affinity for, and and you like, and really making a true impact. That's super cool.
Man, I love how you just broke down the anxiety piece. I'll never forget. And I wish I had the clip, I would play it, but there was a great clip I heard about Ronnie Lott. Like, it was right before the Super Bowl, and a reporter was like, "Hey, are you nervous?" He's like, "Nervous? I've been preparing for this my whole life. Of course I'm not nervous. Like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for." So Kwame, man, so proud of you. Thank you again for the time and the insight. And we'll definitely do this again. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
God bless you, man. Again,
You too.
this is the Commercial Real Estate Report. Share this podcast with friends and colleagues and people you know. I just think it's a great message here from Kwame today. And as we talk about before, the mission here is to really empower and inspire you to build generational wealth with real estate.